They say electricity can't end you unless you touch both wires. My wife proved them wrong. Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible Reddit stories. I'm Eddie Parish, and I used to think I had it all figured out. 39 years old, co-owner of Parish Electric with my brother John, married to the beautiful Beth for 16 years, 2 daughters who were my world. I should have paid more attention to the warning signs, like how Beth's smile never reached her eyes anymore, or how John started avoiding my calls. The first real jolt came on a Tuesday night in March. I was in my home office reviewing contracts for a major downtown renovation project when Beth walked in wearing that look. You know the one, the expression women get when they were about to drop a bomb and pretend it's a birthday present. "Eddie, we need to talk about your mother's car situation," she said, perching on the edge of my desk like a cat ready to pounce. I looked up from the electrical schematics spread across my workspace. "What car situation? Mom's Honda runs fine." "That piece of junk is embarrassing. Karen's mother-in-law drives a brand new Lexus. Tasha's mom has that gorgeous Mercedes SUV. And what does your mother drive? A 12-year-old Honda with a dent in the passenger door." "The dent gives it character," I said, trying to keep things light. "Besides, Mom loves that car. She's driven Hondas for 30 years. Beth's perfectly manicured fingers drummed against my desk. "It's not about what she loves, Eddie. It's about what people think when they see the Parish family matriarch driving around in that eyesore. What does that say about our success?" I set down my pen and really looked at my wife. When had she become so concerned with appearances? The Beth I married cared more about Sunday morning pancakes than what the neighbors thought about our cars. "It says we're practical people who don't waste money on status symbols," I replied. "Waste money?" Her voice pitched higher. "We're not talking about waste, Eddie. We're talking about respect. About showing the community that Parish Electric is a serious company run by serious people." "Our work shows that, Beth. The fact that we've never missed a deadline, never had a safety violation, never left a customer unsatisfied, that's what shows we're serious." She stood up, smoothing down her designer dress. I noticed the price tag was probably more than Mom's car payment used to be, back when she still had payments. "Sometimes I wonder if you have any ambition at all," Beth said. "John understands the importance of image. He drives a BMW. He wears tailored suits to client meetings. He knows how to present success." There it was, the comparison to my older brother. John had always been the flashy one, the smooth talker who could charm clients over expensive dinners while I did the actual electrical engineering that kept our projects running safely and on budget. "John handles sales and client relations," I said. "I handle the technical side. We each play to our strengths." "Maybe it's time you expanded your strengths." Beth moved toward the door, then paused. Karen mentioned that her husband surprised her mother with a new car for her birthday. Just showed up with a big red bow on a brand new Cadillac. The whole neighborhood was talking about what a thoughtful son-in-law he is. And there was the real point. This wasn't about my mother's transportation needs. It was about Beth's need to one-up her friends in the suburban status competition. "How much are we talking about?" I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. "Well, your mother deserves the best. I was thinking something in the 50 to 60,000 range. Maybe that new Lincoln Navigator. It's elegant but substantial. Perfect for a woman of her standing in the community." $60,000. For a car my 70-year-old mother would drive maybe twice a week to the grocery store and church. "Beth, that's insane. We could buy 2 perfectly good cars for that money. Or we could buy one car that makes a statement." She smiled, but it was cold around the edges. "Besides, it's not like we can't afford it. Business has been good, and I know you've been setting aside money for investments." She was right about the money I'd been setting aside, but it wasn't for investments in the way she meant. I'd been building an emergency fund, something to fall back on if the construction industry hit another downturn like it did in 2008. I'd seen too many contractors go under because they spent every dollar they made instead of preparing for lean times. "Let me think about it," I said. "What's to think about? Either you care about your mother's comfort and our family's reputation, or you don't." After she left, I sat staring at the electrical diagrams on my desk, but I wasn't seeing voltage calculations and wire gauges. I was seeing the pattern of our conversations over the past few months, every discussion somehow circling back to money, status, and how we measured up to other couples in our social circle. The next morning, I called my mother to feel out her thoughts on a new car. "A new car?" Mom laughed. "Eddie, honey, why would I need a new car? This Honda has barely got 80,000 miles on it. It'll run another 100,000 easy." "Beth thinks it might be time for an upgrade." There was a long pause. "I see. And what do you think?" I think if you're happy with your car, that's what matters. Good answer. But Eddie, you might want to ask yourself why Beth is suddenly so concerned about what I drive. That afternoon, I found myself paying closer attention to things I'd previously ignored, like how Beth spent 20 minutes on the phone with someone, speaking in hushed tones and ending the call quickly when I walked into the room. Or how she'd started going to the gym 5 times a week instead of her usual 3 and had bought an entire new workout wardrobe. I told myself I was being paranoid. Beth was allowed to have private conversations and take care of her health, but the car demand had triggered something, a recognition that the woman I lived with wasn't quite the same person I'd married. That evening, John stopped by unannounced. My brother had a key to our house, a leftover from the days when we were closer and our families spent more time together. He let himself in while I was helping our younger daughter Bree with her algebra homework. "Eddie, got a minute?" John called from the kitchen. I found him leaning against our granite countertop, looking perfectly pressed despite it being after 8 p.m. John was one of those guys who somehow never got wrinkled or disheveled. His dark hair was always perfectly styled, his shirts always crisp, his smile always camera-ready. "What's up?" I asked. "Beth mentioned you two were discussing a car for Mom. I think it's a great idea." Of course, Beth had already talked to John about it. Lately, it seemed like my wife discussed everything with my brother before bringing it to me. "She mentioned a $60,000 Lincoln Navigator," I said. "Perfect choice. Mom deserves something luxurious. And honestly, Eddie, it's good business. When clients see our family driving quality vehicles, it reinforces their confidence in our company." "Since when do clients pay attention to what our mother drives?" John laughed, that easy laugh that had charmed customers for years. "You'd be surprised what people notice. Image matters in this business. We're not just electricians anymore. We're business owners, community leaders. We need to look the part." I thought doing quality work at fair prices was how we looked the part. "That's the foundation, sure, but presentation seals the deal." John opened our refrigerator and helped himself to a beer without asking. "Look, I know you're more comfortable focusing on the technical side, but trust me on the business development angle. A few strategic purchases now could pay dividends for years." "Strategic purchases?" "The car for Mom is just the start. Beth mentioned you guys might be ready to upgrade your own vehicles soon. Maybe look at a bigger house in Westfield Heights. Really establish the Parish brand as a premium service. Westfield Heights was the most expensive neighborhood in our city. Houses there started at $500,000 and went up from there. Way up." "John, what's gotten into you? 6 months ago you were complaining about the cost of new business cards. Now you want us to buy a mansion?" 6 months ago, I hadn't fully grasped our potential." He took a long drink of my beer. "Eddie, we're sitting on a gold mine. The downtown development project alone is going to net us more profit than we made in the previous 3 years combined. Add in the hospital expansion and the new shopping complex, and we're looking at serious money." "Potential money," I corrected. "Those contracts aren't signed yet." "They're as good as signed. I've been working the relationships, taking the right people to dinner, playing golf with the decision makers. Trust me, this is happening." Something in his tone bothered me. John had always been confident, but this felt different, more intense, like he was trying to convince himself as much as me. Even if all those contracts come through, wouldn't it be smarter to complete the work and collect the payments before we start spending like millionaires? "That's small-time thinking, Eddie. You have to spend money to make money, invest in the image, and the image brings in more business." From the living room, I could hear Beth laughing at something on TV. The sound was lighter than her recent conversations with me had been. "I'll think about the car," I said. "Don't think too long. Beth's excited about surprising Mom, and you know how women get when they have their hearts set on something." After John left, I found Beth curled up on the couch watching some reality show about wealthy housewives. The irony wasn't lost on me. "John thinks the Navigator is a perfect choice," she said without looking away from the screen. "You already talked to him about it?" "He stopped by this morning while you were at the job site. We got to chatting, and the subject came up." She finally looked at me. "He agrees that it's time for our family to step up our game." Our game was working fine. Was it? "Eddie, when was the last time we went on a real vacation? When was the last time I got to buy something nice without checking the bank balance first? When was the last time you took me somewhere fancier than Olive Garden?" The questions hit like a series of small electrical shocks. I thought about our last vacation, a long weekend at a lake cabin 2 hours away. Beth had seemed to enjoy it at the time, but maybe I'd been wrong. I thought about our dinners out, usually casual places where we could relax and talk without breaking the budget. Apparently I'd been wrong about that too. "I didn't realize you were unhappy," I said. "I'm not unhappy. I'm just ready for more, ready for us to enjoy the success we've worked so hard for. That night, lying in bed while Beth slept beside me, I stared at the ceiling and tried to figure out when everything had shifted. When had my practical, down-to-earth wife become someone who measured happiness in luxury cars and expensive restaurants? When had my partnership with John become a competition I didn't know I was losing? The next few days brought a steady drumbeat of hints, suggestions, and not-so-subtle pressure about the car purchase. Beth's friends Karen and Tasha happened to stop by while I was home, and somehow the conversation turned to how sweet it was when husbands surprised their mothers-in-law with generous gifts. "My husband bought my mom a beautiful diamond necklace for her birthday," Karen said, her voice dripping with false modesty. "Nothing too extravagant, just a little something to show appreciation for raising the woman he loves." "That's so thoughtful," Beth replied. "Eddie's been talking about surprising his mother with a new car. Something elegant and comfortable for a woman who's given so much to her family." I hadn't been talking about surprising anyone. If anything, I'd been leaning toward having an honest conversation with Mom about whether she actually wanted a new car, and if so, what kind of practical, reliable vehicle would make her happy. But somehow, in Beth's retelling, I'd become the devoted son planning a grand gesture. "What kind of car?" Tasha asked. "We're thinking a Lincoln Navigator," Beth said. "Luxurious, but not flashy. Perfect for someone of her stature in the community." After her friends left, I confronted Beth about the misrepresentation. "I never said I was planning to surprise Mom with anything. We haven't even made a decision yet. I was just sharing our thoughts with friends. What's wrong with that?" "What's wrong is that now half the neighborhood thinks I'm buying my mother a $60,000 car. What happens when I don't?" "Why wouldn't you?" Beth's eyes flashed with something I couldn't quite identify. "Are you really going to let money stand in the way of making your mother happy?" "This isn't about making Mom happy. She's perfectly happy with her current car. This is about you wanting to impress your friends." "That's not fair, Eddie. I care about your mother. I want her to have nice things." "Since when? Last month you complained that she stayed too long when she came for Sunday dinner?" Beth's face went through several expressions before settling on hurt disappointment. "I can't believe you're throwing that in my face. I was having a bad day, and I said something I didn't mean. That doesn't change the fact that I love your mother and want what's best for her." Maybe I was being unfair. Maybe Beth really had just been having a bad day when she made those comments about Mom overstaying her welcome. Maybe I was reading too much into everything because I was stressed about work and money and the pressure to make decisions I wasn't comfortable with. "Look," I said, "let me talk to Mom directly. If she really wants a new car, we'll figure something out. But I'm not making a $60,000 purchase to impress the neighbors." "Fine," Beth said. "Talk to your mother. But Eddie, don't let your natural cheapness get in the way of doing the right thing." Cheapness. That stung more than it should have. I wasn't cheap. I was careful. I was responsible. I was the guy who made sure we could pay our bills and sleep soundly at night instead of lying awake worrying about debt. But maybe careful looked like cheap to someone who wanted to live like we were already millionaires. The conversation with Mom went exactly as I'd expected. "Eddie, honey, I appreciate that you and Beth want to do something nice for me, but I really don't need a new car. If you want to spend that kind of money on something for me, why don't you take your family on a real vacation? When's the last time you and Beth went somewhere together without worrying about the cost?" "We went to the lake last summer." "I mean somewhere special, somewhere romantic. You two used to talk about visiting Europe, seeing Ireland where your grandfather came from. What happened to those dreams?" I'd forgotten about those conversations. Early in our marriage, Beth and I used to plan imaginary trips to places we'd visit someday when we could afford it. Ireland, Italy, Scotland. We'd buy travel books and mark places we wanted to see, restaurants we wanted to try. Life happened, I guess. The business, the kids, the mortgage. "The kids are old enough to stay with me for a week. The business is doing well. The mortgage isn't going anywhere." Mom's voice was gentle but firm. "Maybe instead of buying me a car I don't need, you should invest in your marriage." That evening, I suggested the Europe trip to Beth. Her reaction surprised me. "Europe? Eddie, that's so impractical. We'd spend thousands of dollars on something that's over in a week. At least a car is something tangible, something that lasts." "I thought you wanted us to enjoy our success." "I do, but I want to enjoy it in ways that make sense, ways that improve our daily lives and our standing in the community." "Since when do you care so much about our standing in the community?" Beth was quiet for a long moment. "Since I realized that we're not kids anymore, Eddie. We're not struggling newlyweds who can afford to be careless about image. We have daughters who are watching how we live, friends who judge us by our choices, a business that depends on people's perception of our success." The business depends on our work quality and reliability. That's part of it. But Eddie, you have to understand. People want to hire successful contractors, not struggling ones. They want to feel confident that we're established, professional, capable of handling major projects. Maybe she had a point. Maybe I was being too stubborn about this. Maybe investing in image really was investing in our future. But $60,000 for a car my mother didn't want still felt wrong. The next morning brought a call from John that changed everything. Eddie, we need to meet. There's something important we need to discuss about the business. What kind of something? Not over the phone. Can you meet me at the office in an hour? John's tone was serious in a way that made my stomach clench. In 20 years of partnership, he'd never been cryptic about business issues. I found him in our conference room with papers spread across the table and an expression I'd never seen before. Part excitement, part nervousness, part something else I couldn't identify. Sit down, he said. This is big. I sat, noticing that the papers were legal documents of some kind. Remember that downtown development project we've been pursuing? The one you said was as good as signed? It's better than signed. It's expanded. John's eyes were bright with an intensity that made me uncomfortable. Eddie, they don't just want us to handle the electrical work. They want us to be general contractors for the entire project. I stared at him. John, we're not general contractors. We're electrical contractors. We don't have the licensing, the bonding, the experience to manage a multi-million-dollar construction project. We can get the licensing. We can partner with people who have the experience. Eddie, this is the opportunity of a lifetime. Instead of making a few $100,000 on electrical work, we're looking at millions in profit. We're also looking at millions in liability if something goes wrong. Nothing's going to go wrong. I've been working on this for months, putting together the right team, the right partnerships. He pushed a document toward me. All we need is your signature to move forward. I picked up the paper and started reading. It was an agreement to form a new company, Parish Development LLC, with John as managing partner and me as technical partner. The financial commitments were staggering. John, this says we're personally guaranteeing loans of over $2 million. That's just paperwork. The project is fully funded by the investors. The personal guarantees are a formality. A formality that could cost us everything we own if the project fails. It's not going to fail. John leaned forward, his voice taking on the persuasive tone he used with difficult clients. Eddie, I've spent months vetting this opportunity. The investors are solid, the market research is sound, the profit projections are conservative. We're looking at enough money to set up our families for life. What families? Your divorce was finalized last month. My future family. And your family? Eddie, think about what this means for Beth and the girls. Private schools, college funds, that house in Westfield Heights Beth's been dreaming about. Beth had been dreaming about a house in Westfield Heights? This was the first I'd heard of it. When did Beth mention Westfield Heights to you? She didn't mention it directly, but it's obvious she's ready for you guys to move up in the world. The car for your mom, the hints about vacations and restaurants. She's trying to tell you she wants more. Maybe she wants more because you've been filling her head with ideas about how much money we're going to make. John sat back, his expression shifting to something cooler. I've been sharing my vision for our company's future. I thought my business partner would want to hear about opportunities for growth. I do want to hear about opportunities. But this isn't growth, John. This is a complete change of business model, taking on risks we're not prepared for, in an industry we don't fully understand. We understand construction. We've been working construction projects for 20 years. We understand electrical work on construction projects. That's completely different from managing entire projects, dealing with architects and city planners and investors and all the other trades. John stood up and walked to the window overlooking our small parking lot. You know what your problem is, Eddie. You think small. You always have. You're content to be a competent electrician making a decent living. But I want more than decent. I want exceptional. There's nothing wrong with decent, John. Decent pays the bills and lets us sleep at night. Decent is what our father settled for. Decent is why he worked until he was 70 and still worried about money. Decent is why Mom drives a 12-year-old Honda instead of something she can be proud of. Mom is proud of her Honda, and Dad worked until he was 70 because he loved the work, not because he was broke. Dad worked until he was 70 because he never took the big chances that could have set him up for early retirement. This was an old argument between us, dating back to when we first started the company. John had always pushed for aggressive expansion, bigger projects, higher risks. I'd always advocated for steady growth, financial stability, building a reputation for reliability rather than flash. I need time to think about this, I said. We don't have time. The investors need an answer by Friday, or they're moving on to another contractor. Then maybe they should move on. John turned from the window, his face flushed with anger. Are you kidding me? Eddie, this is the chance we've been working toward our entire careers. This is our shot at the big leagues. This is our shot at losing everything we've built. What have we built? A small electrical contracting company that makes enough money to pay our bills and take modest vacations. That's not building, Eddie. That's treading water. It's building a sustainable business that supports our families and employees. Our 3 employees who we could afford to pay a lot more if we had the vision to grow. I looked at my brother, really looked at him, and realized I didn't recognize the person standing in front of me. The John I'd grown up with was ambitious but practical, confident but not reckless. This John seemed desperate for something I couldn't identify. What's really going on here? I asked. Why is this opportunity so important to you? John was quiet for a long moment. Because I'm tired of being small-time, Eddie. I'm tired of driving by the big construction companies and knowing we're just as capable as they are, but we're stuck doing electrical work on their projects instead of running our own projects. I'm tired of watching other people get rich while we play it safe. Playing it safe has worked pretty well for us. Has it? When's the last time you were excited about work? When's the last time you felt like we were building something important instead of just maintaining what we have? The questions hit harder than I expected. I couldn't remember the last time I'd felt genuinely excited about a project. Most days, work felt like exactly what John said. Maintenance. Going through the motions of running a business without the thrill of growth or challenge. But that didn't mean I was ready to bet everything on a risky expansion into unfamiliar territory. I understand wanting more, I said. But this isn't the right way to get it. Then what is the right way? Wait another 20 years and hope something better comes along? Build on what we have, take on bigger electrical projects, maybe add some related services like security systems or industrial automation, grow gradually instead of making one giant leap? John shook his head. Gradual growth is just slow decline in a competitive market. You either move forward aggressively or you get left behind. Says who? Says every successful business owner I've talked to. Says the market research. Says basic economics. Says the people who want us to sign personal guarantees for $2 million in loans. We stared at each other across the conference table, and I realized this wasn't just a disagreement about a business opportunity. This was a fundamental difference in how we saw the world, how we defined success, how much risk we were willing to accept in pursuit of our goals. I need to talk to Beth about this, I said. Beth's already on board. She thinks it's exactly what our family needs. The words hit me like a physical blow. You discussed this with my wife before you discussed it with me? She's part of our extended business family. She has a right to know about opportunities that could affect her future. She's my wife, John. My business partner is supposed to discuss major decisions with me first, not go around me to my family. I didn't go around you. I shared general information about potential growth opportunities. Beth was excited about the possibilities. What exactly did you tell her? That we were looking at expanding into general contracting, that it could significantly increase our income, that it would position us as major players in the local construction market. And what did she say? John hesitated. She said it was about time you started thinking bigger. The betrayal was complete. My wife and my business partner had been discussing my shortcomings and my company's future behind my back. They'd apparently agreed that I was the problem. Too small thinking, too risk-averse, too content with our current success. I need some time to process this, I said. Eddie, don't let pride get in the way of good business sense. This isn't about pride. This is about making smart decisions based on complete information instead of rushing into commitments that could destroy everything we've worked for, or create everything we've dreamed of. That evening, I confronted Beth about her conversation with John. He told me you discussed the development project with him. He mentioned some exciting possibilities for expansion. I think it sounds wonderful. Wonderful enough to risk losing our house if the project fails? Beth looked at me like I'd said something ridiculous. Eddie, successful people take calculated risks. That's how they become successful. This isn't a calculated risk. This is gambling with money we don't have on a business we don't understand. We don't understand it because you've never been willing to learn about it. John understands it. He's been studying the development business for months. John's been studying it for months, and he's just now telling me about it. Doesn't that bother you? What bothers me is that your first reaction to any opportunity is to find reasons why it won't work instead of reasons why it will. My first reaction is to protect our family's financial security. Our family's financial security, would be a lot stronger if we had the courage to pursue real wealth instead of settling for comfortable mediocrity. Comfortable mediocrity. There it was, the phrase that revealed how Beth really saw our life together. Everything I'd worked for, everything I was proud of, was just mediocrity to her. "I thought you were happy with our life," I said. "I was, but happiness and settling aren't the same thing. I want our daughters to see us as people who chase their dreams, not people who play it safe and wonder what might have been. I want our daughters to see us as people who make smart decisions and don't risk their security for get-rich-quick schemes." This isn't a get-rich-quick scheme, Eddie. This is a legitimate business opportunity that could set us up for life. According to John, according to the market research, the financial projections, and the investors who are willing to put their own money behind the project. Beth had clearly been briefed thoroughly on John's presentation. I wondered how many other conversations they'd had about the business, about our finances, about my supposed shortcomings as a provider and partner. "I'm not signing anything until I've had a chance to review everything independently," I said. "Fine, but don't take too long. Opportunities like this don't wait for people who can't make decisions." The next few days were tense. Beth was polite but distant, treating me like someone who was disappointing her by being unreasonable. John called twice a day with updates on the project timeline and reminders that the investors needed an answer soon. I spent my evenings reviewing the documents John had given me, researching the development company and the investors, trying to understand the real risks and rewards of the opportunity. What I found wasn't encouraging. The development company had been formed just 6 months earlier by people with limited construction experience. The investors were legitimate, but they were also known for pulling out of projects quickly if early milestones weren't met. The profit projections were based on best-case scenarios that assumed no delays, no cost overruns, and no market changes. Most concerning was the personal guarantee clause. If the project failed, John and I would be personally responsible for all debts and obligations. We could lose our homes, our savings, our existing business, everything. I called my accountant and my lawyer to get their opinions. Both advised extreme caution. "Eddie," my accountant said, "I've seen a dozen small contractors get wiped out trying to make the jump to general contracting. The ones who succeed usually start with much smaller projects and build up gradually. This is like trying to go from high school baseball to the major leagues without playing in the minors." My lawyer was even more blunt. "The personal guarantee language is terrible. You'd be better off going to Vegas and putting everything on red. At least there you'd know the odds." Armed with professional opinions that confirmed my instincts, I called a meeting with John for Thursday morning, one day before his deadline. "I've reviewed everything," I told him. "I can't support moving forward with this project." John's face went through several expressions before settling on cold anger. "Can't or won't?" "Both. The risks are too high, the timeline is too aggressive, and we don't have the experience to manage a project this complex." "We can hire the experience." "With what money? The budget doesn't include enough contingency for the kind of expert help we'd need." "Eddie, you're making excuses because you're afraid of success. I'm making rational business decisions based on facts and professional advice." "Professional advice from who?" I told him about my conversations with the accountant and lawyer. John listened with growing irritation. "So you went behind my back to torpedo this opportunity." "I did due diligence on a major business decision. That's not going behind your back. That's being responsible." "You could have included me in those conversations." "I could have, if you'd included me in your conversations with the investors, the development company, and my wife." John stood up and walked to the window again. "This is about Beth, isn't it? You're upset that she supports the project." "I'm upset that my business partner discussed major business decisions with my wife before discussing them with me. Beth is part of this family. She deserves to know about opportunities that affect her future. Beth is my wife, not my business advisor, and she's not part of this company." "Maybe she should be. Maybe you need someone in your life who isn't afraid of taking chances." The comment was designed to hurt, and it succeeded. The implication was clear. Beth was the ambitious one, the visionary, while I was the anchor holding everyone back. "If you want to pursue this opportunity, you're free to do it without me," I said, "but I won't sign personal guarantees for a project I don't believe in. Without you, there is no opportunity. The investors want Parish Electric's reputation and track record. They're not interested in a startup company with no history." "Then maybe you should take that as a sign that this isn't the right opportunity." John turned from the window, his face flushed with anger and something else. Desperation, maybe, or fear. "You know what, Eddie? I'm tired of your negativity. I'm tired of having to convince you to take advantage of opportunities that could benefit both of us. I'm tired of being held back by a partner who's more interested in playing it safe than building something great. and I'm tired of being pressured into decisions that could destroy everything we've built. What have we built? A small company that makes enough money to get by. That's not an achievement, Eddie. That's just survival. It's a good business that provides for our families and our employees. It's a reputation for quality and reliability. It's financial stability and professional respect. It's mediocrity with a nice paint job. We stared at each other across 20 years of partnership, and I realized we'd reached a crossroads that had been building for longer than either of us had admitted. Maybe we want different things, I said. Maybe we do. That evening, I told Beth about my decision to pass on the development project. Her reaction was immediate and intense. You said no? Eddie, this was our chance to really make something of ourselves. We've already made something of ourselves. We have a successful business, a beautiful home, 2 great kids. We have the basics. We have enough to get by. But we don't have enough to really live? What does that mean? It means I'm tired of checking the bank balance before I buy groceries. It means I'm tired of shopping at Target when I'd rather shop somewhere nicer. It means I'm tired of driving a 5-year-old car and living in a neighborhood where the houses are too small and too close together. I thought you loved our house. I did love it, when we were starting out, when it represented progress and achievement. But we're not starting out anymore, Eddie. We're supposed to be established. We're supposed to be successful. We are successful. By whose definition? Look around at our friends, our neighbors, the other business owners we know. How many of them are still living like we're living? I thought about our social circle. Other contractors, some engineers, a few teachers and nurses, and small business owners. Most of them lived pretty much like we did. Comfortable, but not extravagant. Secure, but not wealthy. Most of them live exactly like we live. The ones who haven't grown, maybe. But Karen's husband just bought her a BMW. Tasha and Mike are building a new house with a 3-car garage. The Hendersons took their kids to Europe last summer. And maybe they're all living beyond their means to keep up with each other. Or maybe they're living up to their potential instead of settling for less than they could have. Beth, what's really going on here? 6 months ago, you seemed happy with our life. Now everything we have is suddenly not enough. She was quiet for a long moment, and I thought maybe she was going to give me an honest answer about what had changed, what had shifted her perspective so dramatically. Instead, she said, I guess I just realized that being content isn't the same as being happy. And you think spending money we don't have on things we don't need will make you happy? I think having choices would make me happy. I think not having to worry about money would make me happy. I think feeling like we're moving forward instead of just maintaining would make me happy. We are moving forward. The business grows every year. We're building equity in the house. The kids are thriving. That's not moving forward, Eddie. That's just aging, getting older while staying in the same place. After Beth went to bed, I sat in my home office staring at the electrical diagrams on my desk and trying to understand how everything had gotten so complicated. 6 months ago, I'd thought I had a solid marriage, a good partnership with my brother, and a successful business. Now I felt like I was failing at all 3. The next morning brought a call from John. The investors are moving on to another contractor, he said without preamble. I'm sorry it didn't work out. Are you? Because it seems like you're relieved. I'm relieved we didn't make a decision we'd regret. I'm sorry you're disappointed. Disappointed doesn't begin to cover it, Eddie. This was our shot at the big time, and you blew it because you're too scared to take risks. I made a business decision based on careful analysis of the risks and rewards. You made a decision based on fear. Maybe fear isn't always a bad thing in business. Maybe fear keeps you from making stupid mistakes. Or maybe fear keeps you from achieving anything worth achieving. There was a long pause, and I could hear John breathing heavily on the other end of the line. I've been thinking about our partnership, he said finally. What about it? Maybe it's time we considered making some changes. What kind of changes? Maybe it's time we each went our own way, pursued our own vision of what success looks like. The words hit me like a physical blow, even though I'd sensed this conversation was coming. You want to dissolve the partnership? I want to be free to pursue opportunities without having to convince a partner who doesn't share my vision. John, we've been partners for 20 years. We built this business together. And maybe we've taken it as far as we can together. Maybe it's time to see what we can each accomplish on our own. What about our employees, our ongoing contracts, our clients? We'll figure out the details. The important thing is that we both get the freedom to pursue what we really want. After John hung up, I sat in my office trying to process what had just happened. In the span of a week, I'd lost the support of my wife and the partnership of my brother. I'd gone from thinking I had everything figured out to wondering if I'd been wrong about everything. That evening, I tried to talk to Beth about John's decision to end our partnership. "Maybe it's for the best," she said. "You two obviously want different things." "We've been partners for 20 years, Beth. We've built something together. You've built something that's holding both of you back. Maybe you'll both be happier pursuing your own paths." "What if I can't make it on my own? What if the business fails without John's sales and client relationships?" "Then you'll figure something else out. But Eddie, you can't let fear of failure keep you from trying to succeed." "I'm not afraid of failure. I'm afraid of unnecessary risks that could hurt our family." "Our family is already being hurt by your refusal to take necessary risks." "What does that mean?" "It means the girls are watching their father choose safety over ambition. It means I'm watching my husband settle for less than his potential. It means we're all living smaller lives than we could be living." "I thought we were living good lives." "Good isn't enough anymore, Eddie. Good is what you settle for when you don't believe you can have great." The next few weeks were a blur of lawyers and accountants and difficult conversations about how to dissolve a 20-year partnership fairly. John wanted to keep the Parish Electric name and the main office. I could have the equipment and the ongoing contracts, but I'd have to start over with a new company name and a new location. It wasn't entirely unfair, but it felt like being erased from something I'd helped create. Beth was supportive in practical ways. She helped me look at office space, reviewed contracts, even suggested names for the new company. But emotionally, she felt distant, like she was going through the motions of being a supportive wife while waiting to see if I'd prove myself capable of real success. The breaking point came on a Saturday morning in May. I was in the garage organizing tools and equipment for the move to my new office when Beth came out with a cup of coffee and that look again. "We need to talk about the car for your mother," she said. I'd completely forgotten about the Lincoln Navigator in the chaos of dissolving the partnership and starting over. "Beth, this isn't the time for major purchases. I'm starting a new business from scratch. This is exactly the time. Your mother needs to see that you're still successful, still capable of taking care of your family. My mother needs to see that I'm making smart financial decisions during a period of transition. Your mother needs to see that her son isn't a failure." The word hung in the air between us like a live wire. "Is that what you think I am? A failure?" "I think you're someone who's afraid of being seen as successful." "That doesn't make any sense." "Doesn't it? You had a chance to expand into general contracting, and you said no because it was too risky. You had a partnership that could have grown into something significant, and you let it dissolve because you couldn't compromise. Now you have a chance to show that you're still capable of generosity and success, and you're saying no because it's not practical." "I'm saying no because spending $60,000 on a car my mother doesn't want while I'm starting a new business would be insane. Or it would be a statement that you believe in yourself and your ability to succeed. It would be a statement that I'm terrible with money and don't understand basic business principles." Beth set down her coffee cup and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before, complete disappointment mixed with something that might have been contempt. "You know what, Eddie? I used to think you were just cautious. Now I'm starting to think you're actually afraid of success." "I'm not afraid of success. I'm working toward success in a sustainable way." "Sustainable mediocrity isn't success. It's just a slow way of failing." "What do you want from me, Beth? What would actually make you happy?" "I want a husband who believes in himself enough to take chances. I want a partner who's excited about building something great instead of just maintaining something adequate. I want to be married to someone who sees opportunities instead of just obstacles." "You want to be married to John?" The words came out before I could stop them, but once they were spoken, I realized they'd been building in my mind for weeks. Beth's face went pale, then red. "What did you just say?" "You want someone like John, someone who's willing to take big risks, make grand gestures, pursue ambitious dreams without worrying about the consequences." "John is your brother. John is everything you think a successful man should be. Confident, ambitious, willing to bet everything on big opportunities. John is also divorced and starting over at 42 because his big dreams didn't include taking care of his family. But he's exciting, he's dynamic, he's not afraid of success." "Eddie, you're being ridiculous." "Am I? Because it seems like every conversation we have lately ends with you telling me how I should be more like John, think more like John, take risks like John. I've never said you should be more like John. You've said it without saying it. Every time you complain about my caution, my small thinking, my fear of taking chances, you're comparing me to someone who's everything I'm not." Beth was quiet for a long moment. "Maybe I am making comparisons, but not to John specifically, to successful people in general, to people who aren't content to just get by. And you think I'm content to just get by? I think you're terrified of wanting more than you have because you're afraid you might not be able to get it. Or maybe I'm grateful for what I have because I understand how easy it is to lose it. You can't lose what you never really had, Eddie. What does that mean? It means if you never take risks, you never really win. You just avoid losing for as long as possible. That night, I lay awake thinking about Beth's words and wondering if she was right. Maybe I was afraid of success. Maybe I'd spent so many years focused on avoiding failure that I'd forgotten how to pursue real achievement. But every time I started to consider taking bigger risks, I thought about our daughters, our mortgage, our employees who depended on steady work. I thought about all the contractors I'd known who'd gambled everything on big opportunities and lost. Maybe Beth saw that as fear. Maybe it was just responsibility. The next morning brought an unexpected call from my mother. Eddie, I need to tell you something, and I want you to hear it from me first. What's going on, Mom? John came to see me yesterday. He wanted to talk about the business, about your partnership ending. What did he say? He said you'd been holding him back for years, preventing him from pursuing opportunities that could have made you both wealthy. He said you were too risk-averse to be a good business partner. And what did you tell him? I told him that being risk-averse had kept you from losing everything during the recession, when half the contractors in town went bankrupt. I told him that steady growth was better than spectacular failure. Thanks, Mom. I wasn't finished. He also said Beth was frustrated with your lack of ambition, that she wanted more than you were willing to provide. My stomach clenched. He said that? He did. And I told him that if Beth was frustrated, maybe she should talk to her husband instead of gossiping with her brother-in-law. Mom, you didn't need to get involved in this. Yes, I did, because I'm tired of watching my sons tear each other down instead of building each other up, and I'm tired of watching my daughter-in-law undermine her husband instead of supporting him. Beth's not undermining me. She just wants us to be more successful. Eddie, honey, there's a difference between wanting success and being dissatisfied with everything you have. Beth seems to think happiness comes from having more money and nicer things, but I've watched a lot of people chase that kind of happiness, and most of them end up miserable. Maybe she's right, though. Maybe I've been playing it too safe. Or maybe you've been building something sustainable while other people have been building something flashy. Time will tell which approach works better. That afternoon, I was working in my new office space, a small building I was renting in an industrial park, when Beth called. I just talked to your mother, she said without preamble. About what? About John's visit yesterday, about the things he said about our marriage. What things? He told her I was frustrated with you, that I wanted more than you could provide. He made it sound like I was some kind of gold digger who married you for money and was disappointed by your lack of ambition. Aren't you frustrated with me? That's not the point, Eddie. The point is that John had no right to discuss our marriage with your mother, and he had no right to make me sound like some shallow woman who only cares about material things. But you do care about material things? The car, the house in Westfield Heights, the expensive restaurants. I care about what those things represent. Security, success, the ability to enjoy life instead of just surviving it. And you think I'm not providing those things? I think you're capable of providing those things, but you're choosing not to because you're afraid of what it might cost. I'm choosing not to because I think there are more important things than impressing people with expensive possessions. Like what? Like having a stable business that can weather economic downturns, like having enough savings to handle emergencies, like being able to sleep at night without worrying about debt. Eddie, those are important things, but they're not the only important things. What about dreams? What about ambition? What about building something you can be proud of? I am proud of what I've built. I'm proud of the business, the reputation, the relationships with clients and employees. But are you excited about it? When you wake up in the morning, are you excited about going to work, about the challenges and opportunities ahead? The question hit harder than I expected, because the honest answer was no. I wasn't excited about work most days. I was competent, responsible, reliable, but not excited. Excitement isn't everything, I said. Maybe not, but it's something. And Eddie, I miss being excited about our future together. That evening, I found myself thinking about the early days of our marriage, when Beth and I used to stay up late talking about our dreams and plans. She was right. We had been excited then. Excited about building a business, starting a family, creating a life together. When had that excitement faded? When had we stopped dreaming about possibilities and started focusing only on responsibilities? Maybe Beth wasn't wrong to want more. Maybe I had become too comfortable with just maintaining what we had instead of trying to build something better. But I still believed that taking huge risks with our family's security wasn't the answer. The next week brought a series of events that changed everything. On Monday, I learned that John's new business venture, the development project I'd refused to join, was already in trouble. The investors had pulled out after discovering that the development company had misrepresented their experience and financial backing. John was facing potential lawsuits and financial ruin. On Tuesday, I got a call from our biggest client, offering me a contract that would provide steady work for the next 2 years. It wasn't exciting or glamorous, but it was solid, reliable income that would allow me to build my new business gradually. On Wednesday, Beth announced that she was going to visit her sister in California for a few weeks to think about things. What things? I asked. Our marriage, our future, whether we want the same things out of life. Beth, don't you think we should think about those things together? We've been trying to think about them together for months, Eddie, but we keep coming to different conclusions. Maybe some time apart will give us both perspective. Or maybe it will just make it easier for you to decide you'd be happier without me. Maybe it will. Or maybe it will help me remember why I fell in love with you in the first place. After Beth left, I found myself alone in our house for the first time in years. The girls were staying with friends while their mother was away, and the silence was both peaceful and unsettling. I spent the evenings working on business plans for my new company, thinking about what kind of business I really wanted to build. Without the pressure of Beth's expectations or John's ambitions, I could focus on what actually mattered to me. What mattered was doing good work for fair prices. Building relationships with clients based on trust and reliability, creating steady employment for skilled workers, growing gradually and sustainably instead of chasing quick profits. Maybe that was small thinking, maybe it was mediocre ambition, but it felt right to me in a way that John's grand schemes never had. 2 weeks into Beth's California trip, she called with an update. I've been thinking about what you said about me wanting to be married to someone like John, she said. Beth, I shouldn't have said that. I was angry and... No, you were right. Not about John specifically, but about me wanting you to be someone you're not. What do you mean? I mean, I've been trying to turn you into the kind of person who takes big risks and makes grand gestures, because I thought that's what successful people do. But maybe success looks different for different people. And maybe I've been too rigid about avoiding any risk because I was afraid of making mistakes. Maybe we both lost sight of what we actually want instead of what we think we should want. What do you actually want, Beth? I want to be married to someone who's passionate about his work, even if that work isn't the most glamorous or highest-paying job in the world. I want to be part of building something together, even if it's not the biggest or flashiest thing we could build. And I want to be married to someone who believes in me, even when I'm not perfect. Someone who wants to build a life with me instead of trying to fix me. So, where does that leave us? I don't know, but I'd like to find out. Beth came home the following week, and we spent long evenings talking about what we really wanted from our marriage and our life together. It wasn't easy. We'd both said things that couldn't be unsaid, made assumptions that couldn't be unmade. But slowly, we started to find our way back to each other. Beth got a part-time job at a local nonprofit, something that gave her a sense of purpose and accomplishment that didn't depend on how much money I made. I started taking on more challenging electrical projects that pushed me to learn new skills and technologies. We didn't buy Mom a $60,000 car. Instead, we took the family on a week-long vacation to Ireland, something we'd talked about for years but never done. John's business venture collapsed completely, leaving him financially devastated and professionally damaged. I felt sorry for him, but I also felt grateful that I'd trusted my instincts about the risks involved. 6 months after our separation and reconciliation, Beth and I were stronger than we'd been in years. We'd learned to communicate about our dreams and fears without trying to change each other's fundamental nature. But our relationship with John remained strained. He blamed me for his business failure, claiming that if I'd joined the development project, my reputation and financial backing could have saved it. He also seemed to resent that Beth and I had worked through our problems while his own life fell apart. The final confrontation came at Mom's 71st birthday party. John showed up drunk and bitter, making snide comments about my small-time thinking and Beth's settling for mediocrity. He told anyone who would listen that I'd sabotaged his business opportunity out of jealousy and fear. You couldn't stand the thought of me being more successful than you, he said loudly enough for the entire party to hear. So you convinced Beth that I was leading you into some kind of scam. John, you're drunk. Maybe you should go home. I'm drunk, but I'm not wrong. You've always been jealous of me, Eddie. Jealous that I'm better with people, better at sales, better at seeing the big picture. If you're so much better at everything, why are you broke and starting over at 43? The question was cruel, but I was tired of being blamed for John's poor decisions. I'm broke because my business partner stabbed me in the back when I needed him most. You're broke because you tried to build a business on other people's money without understanding the risks involved. And you're mediocre because you're too scared to take any risks at all. Maybe, but I'm mediocre with a successful business, a happy marriage, and a secure future. You're broke, alone, and starting over from nothing. The party went silent. John stared at me with pure hatred, and I realized our relationship was over. Not just the business partnership, but the brotherhood we'd shared for 40 years. You know what, Eddie? You deserve the small life you've chosen. You deserve a wife who settles for less and kids who'll never see their father as anything special. And you deserve exactly what you got. Nothing. John left the party, and we haven't spoken since. That was 3 years ago. My business has grown steadily, providing good work for 8 employees and steady income for my family. Beth and I renewed our wedding vows on our 20th anniversary, promising to support each other's dreams while accepting each other's limitations. John moved to another state and started over in a different industry. I heard through Mom that he's doing okay, not spectacularly successful, but stable. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choices. Maybe I could have found a middle ground between reckless risk-taking and excessive caution. Maybe I could have supported John's ambitions while protecting my family's security. But mostly, I'm content with the life I've built. It's not the most exciting or glamorous life possible, but it's solid, sustainable, and genuinely mine. Beth still occasionally mentions things she'd like to have: a bigger house, a luxury car, exotic vacations. But now she mentions them as dreams to work toward gradually, not demands that need to be met immediately. And I've learned to dream a little bigger myself. Not about risky business ventures or get-rich-quick schemes, but about the kind of company I want to build, the kind of work I want to do, the kind of legacy I want to leave. Last month, I hired John's former assistant, Joanne, who had been out of work since his business failed. She's helping me expand into industrial automation, a natural extension of our electrical work that doesn't require huge risks or massive capital investment. You know, she said on her first day, John always said you were too conservative to build anything significant, but looking at what you've accomplished in 3 years, I think maybe he had it backwards. What do you mean? I mean, maybe taking smart risks consistently is better than taking huge risks occasionally. Maybe building something sustainable is more impressive than building something spectacular that collapses. Maybe she's right. Or maybe we all just tell ourselves stories that make our choices seem wise in retrospect. But I sleep well at night, and I wake up each morning looking forward to the day's work. Beth smiles at me the way she used to when we were young and everything seemed possible. And Mom still drives her Honda, which now has 150,000 miles and runs better than ever. Sometimes the best revenge against people who doubt you is simply proving them wrong by living well.